Hi there, Carpoolers, and welcome to another episode of Carpool. Today's guest is very, very intriguing. I've just discovered that I may well be a skeptic. I'm not absolutely convinced. I'm not sure I know what it means, but I think I am slightly skeptical. But I don't want to be a kind of miserable old bloke that just moans on about everything being rubbish. I've never wanted to be that. I want to be a jolly old man, not a grumpy old man. So I'm hoping that I can get some answers from today's passenger. Please welcome into the passenger seat, Rebecca Watson. Can you remember life when there wasn't the internet?
Yes, actually.
Can you?
Yes. I think I'm of that age where I'm just on the cusp.
Right.
I remember very distinctly. My dad worked for DuPont in Delaware in their IT department.
Right.
And
I don't really know what DuPont do. I mean, I know that name really well.
They make chemicals and destroy the planet.
Right.
But
Marvellous.
my dad was not actually involved in that part. So he did their IT, so he's
Right.
big into computers. And
Oh, so
things
you
like
had that in your family background?
Yeah, well, I remember he came home one day and, he set everything up on our computer and we were running DOS at the time.
Right.
And he said, there's this amazing thing and it's going to change the world and you can, and I was a huge reader, so
Right.
the way he pitched it to me was you can read a book in a library in Egypt. And I
Right.
said, oh, that's awesome. Okay, let's see it. So he gets on and he uses DOS to dial into what was then the World Wide Web or whatever.
Wow.
And I said, this is profoundly disappointing. It was just...
Because it would have been green
was
figures on a
just-
black screen type of thing.
It was just some text. I was expecting at least something,
Yeah.
the equivalent of Pong or something.
Yes.
But no, it was really disappointing.
Wow.
So I said, this sucks. But then when we got Windows 3.1 and there were pictures now, I kind
Yes.
of got it a bit
Right.
more. So,
Right.
yeah.
So you certainly grew up with it, didn't
I
you?
did, yeah. I was probably, 10 or 11
Right,
then?
right.
So, yeah, I taught myself HTML and all that.
Wow.
I was a little dork.
God, that's so impressive. I tried to find out this morning on Twitter was whether I was a skeptic, because that's
yeah.
that's where I came across you, was I think through tweets and I think through Twitter, and someone said you should get Rebecca Watson in the car, and I went, oh right, and then I could, you
Who the
do
hell's that?
Yeah, do a quick bit of googling, and
Which
you
is
go,
what all your audience is saying right now. Who the hell's that?
but it
What?
doesn't. No, that's the whole point of this show. I want people on,
The little people, even.
No, proper people who are clever and have done clever things and ask intelligent questions. Because I think that's what made me click when I saw your site. I went, maybe I'm a skeptic. I don't know. I don't even know if I am.
That's the funny thing about the word, is that it tends to get kind of a bad rap. A lot of people
Yeah.
confuse skeptic with cynic.
Yes.
They think that skepticism is about being a grumpy old man.
Yeah.
And or they it just never occurs to people to call themselves a skeptic,
Yeah.
which I think is totally okay, because what we try to tell people and what we try to encourage is just to be skeptical, not to be a
Yes.
skeptic, but just to be, look at what's going on around you and try to be rational about
Yeah.
the world. Ask questions, try to find out how the universe really works, because it's so much more amazing and so much more beautiful than the lies that people try to peddle
Right.
to you, In the end, did you figure out if
I think I probably am.
you're a skeptic?
I just
Okay.
didn't know.
I figured you probably were. I've seen some of your other shows, and yeah, you're a very
Well,
curious
it is that.
person.
Yes. I mean, I think that's what keeps you going, isn't it? That curiosity, and
Yeah.
also that I mean, the thing that I have to remind myself, the easy trap to fall into, is that you have a sort of system of not necessarily beliefs but assumptions about the world, and then you fit everything into those assumptions, and then occasionally
Yeah.
things don't fit, and that's quite distressing. If it's a heartfelt, a thing that you've held for a long time as being important,
Right. Yeah.
and then you suddenly find there is really a good question about that.
Right. And I love that moment. I come to embrace that moment where
Yeah.
something clicks and you think, wait a minute, I thought it was something else entirely.
Yes.
And I think those moments are really to be appreciated.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there's a weird thing about this skeptics community. There's a whole subculture of skeptics,
Right.
that a lot of people don't even know exists.
Yeah.
But they're populated quite a bit by magicians. And for instance, I got involved in it because I was a magician. I worked my way through college as a magician,
Wow.
running a magic shop.
Wow.
And
See,
so-
it's always worth getting people in the car.
So yeah,
she's a magician. Just get into it.
Well, it was.
But can you do like actual? I mean, we won't talk about magicians for a long time. But can you do those clever tricks with cards and coins?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
I really liked cards mostly. I was a
Right.
close-up magician, and so I was a big fan of Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
So Penn and Teller happened to be big fans of a guy named James Randi.
Who I've heard of.
Yeah, he was a big magician, escape artist back in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
And he went on to fund or begin the James Randi Educational Foundation. And the basic idea of it is to investigate pseudoscience and the nasty word for it is to debunk. But
Right.
the idea of it is that he goes in with an open mind and asks, for instance, psychics, prove what
Right.
you can do under
Yes.
strict circumstances.
Yeah.
And if you can, I'll give you $1 million.
Right.
So, I learned more about Randi and decided, wow, that's actually really cool. I was never into science very much. I was more of an English major
Right.
sort. So
Is that what you were doing at college?
yeah, I was actually
Right.
studying communication,
Right.
which, as you can tell, I did very well. Yeah. Before college, I spoke in a series of clicks and whistles, and gesticulating. No, it's a total bullshit degree. So, but in college, outside of college, but during college,
Yeah.
I developed this appreciation for science because what Randi taught me, in a way, is that there are people out there who have. They try to sell you on this idea of a magical world, but what they're really selling you is a very narrow view of the world that's not nearly as interesting as the real world.
Right.
So at the same time that I was learning how to not get scammed, I was learning to appreciate science and everything that science can teach us.
Yes.
So when you go to these, we have a lot of skeptical conferences and events and things, and you'll find this really amazing mixture of magicians and entertainers and scientists and comedians.
Right.
It's a really wonderful crowd that I can't get enough of. They're a lot of fun.
Right.
So, and you've had Brian Cox
Yes.
on your show.
Yeah.
He was recently a speaker at the Amazing Meeting, London, which is the Amazing Meeting is what James Randi kind of set up as a yearly thing in Vegas, and we had our first one here in London this year. So I got to meet Brian, lovely guy.
Isn't he amazing?
Yeah, and his wife Gia.
Yes.
I adore her.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Best.
Yeah.
So.
She sent a good luck.
Yeah,
tweet.
I saw. She's awesome.
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah. Because I didn't even know that was on. So that shows how unconnected I am to the world of skepticism.
Well, now I've got your number, and I'm
Yeah.
going to be bothering you to
Yes,
come
I
out.
do.
to-
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. I grew up at a time of effectively the exact opposite. The kind of flip side of hippie. I mean, I built a wind generator in 1973 in a commune. So I was into that stuff then.
I'm picturing you. Did you have like the long
very, very long hair.
hair?
It sit on my hair. That's how long my hair was.
Yes.
I was a proper hippie.
I can see it in my head.
Yeah, but I was surrounded by people that were, well-educated, intelligent people who were completely obsessed with mysticism, homeopathy, astrology, all these things, and it was so much part of that culture.
Yeah.
That to be effectively skeptical of that was to be very uncool.
Yeah.
It wasn't a fashionable thing to be.
I was a hippie. I mean, it wasn't
Right.
in the same time period. I'm sure it was much hippier in your day. But I spent 3 years in Seattle before I really got into the whole skeptical thing.
Yeah.
And I remember actually taking homeopathic remedies because in Seattle it was just taken for granted. That's just something
That's
you
medicine.
do. Amongst my crowd, I was working as an activist at the time, so of course it's a bunch of hippies.
Yeah.
But it's funny because nobody knew what homeopathy was, and it wasn't until I kind of removed myself from the situation, actually looked into it. Everybody there, and a lot of people still today, assume that homeopathy is just naturopathy, or using natural ingredients to heal yourself.
Yeah.
That's not what it is, and the homeopathy, I feel, is one of the easiest things for me to disabuse people of, because all I have to do is describe exactly what homeopathy claims to do.
Yes.
Which is that homeopathy works on two principles. One is the less you have of something, the better. So I mean, and not just that, but just to an absurd degree.
Yeah.
You know, you take one droplet of something, put it in a swimming pool, mix it up, take a drop of that, put it in the ocean, mix that up, take a drop of that, that's your cure. And the other one is that like cures like. So if you get poison ivy, the best thing to do would be to treat that with poison ivy.
Yeah.
But people don't think about it. They just sort of, they see it on the shelf at Whole Foods or whatever.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, I'll try that. And it's just water, sugar water.
Yes.
No, astrology is another one where just the basic idea, when you think about it, it makes zero sense.
whatsoever.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so the stars, which are billions of miles away,
have an effect.
have an effect on me.
On a fetus when you're born.
Yeah. No, I mean. Does the sun have that much of an effect on you? It's much closer.
The moon?
And a lot of people think that the moon does as well, because the human body is made up of 97% water or whatever.
Yeah.
No, actually the moon does not have that much of an effect on you at all. The person, you sitting next to me, would have more of a gravitational pull upon me than the moon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, so a lot of the stuff we do with Skeptic and other skeptics do it is consumer protection.
Right.
You know, just informing people of what it is that they're actually buying when they buy those homeopathy remedies, or when they visit the psychic. What are you paying for?
Yes.
Am I paying for somebody to talk to my dead relative, or am I talking to somebody who's a skilled cold reader, basically doing a magic trick?
Yes.
And unfortunately, all signs that we have right now point to the latter. It's that it's a magic trick, because no psychic has been ever been able to demonstrate that they have any kind of paranormal skills. I know a lot of people who lose loved ones, and you're desperate, and you want nothing more than to just talk to them one more time.
Yeah.
And where there's desperation, unfortunately, there will be someone there to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And so I feel that the very worst of the psychics, for instance, Sylvia Brown is a good example.
Right.
I don't know are you familiar with her work? She's this horrible woman who's on television in the US quite a bit. And she basically sits up on stage and people come and sob to her, and then she says something like, he says hi, and then next, and it's awful. And it's the point
so
where
cruel, isn't it?
it's terribly cruel, because it basically takes a giant dump all over these people's memories of their parents, and that's all they've got left.
Yeah.
And you can say that psychics can sometimes provide some sort of emotional healing, things like that. But unfortunately, you can get that same sort of therapy by going to, say, a trained professional who doesn't claim to have paranormal abilities.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel that, to go back to what people often think of the word skeptic, and how it's often thought to be a grumpy old man sort of thing, what I want to get out there is that skepticism is actually the compassionate philosophy. It's the compassionate way to say, let's be rational, let's look at the way the world really is, and let's not get scammed.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. But then, because America is so religious in comparison with here, I mean, I presume you've noticed that we're not quite so...
I think I've noticed that, yes.
Not
Which
even
offends
a month.
my Baptist sensibility.
We should all be in church. So you were brought up in a religious...
I was.
with religious belief.
Yeah, I was brought up Baptist. It wasn't, not, Bible thumping, fire and brimstone.
I'm not sure what area of the state you're from.
Oh, I'm from South Jersey, just outside Philadelphia.
Right.
So, but then I live the past few years in Boston. So,
right.
I'm East Coast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, fairly liberal upbringing and everything.
Right.
Though it still makes my mom cry to think that I'm an atheist. I think.
It does upset her. I mean,
I think so. We don't talk about it.
Right. So she would still go. Well, I don't know what you do when you're a Baptist. You go to the chapel or something.
They go to church.
Right.
But they don't anymore. They
don't.
No. So that's the weird thing. But it's just this.
It's still important.
It's this background religion. It's just this idea that yeah, we don't go to church anymore, but we do know that when we die, we're all going to be together in heaven.
Right.
Except for Rebecca, who's going to be burning in hell.
For eternity.
Right. But, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Heaven for the weather, hell for the company.
Yes.
You know? But yeah, so it wasn't, religion wasn't it.
I'm just wondering, because presumably to have the publicly held beliefs that you do, or not beliefs, system of understanding, is far more contentious in the United States than it would be here. I mean, people wouldn't even notice if you...
Yeah, it is. You know, there are definite differences between the countries, and yeah, the States is much more religious, although when you're in the big cities, as I always have been, it's really not that big of a deal, you know. In Boston, you know, I'd say that probably most people are irreligious or just don't care.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I don't want to let England off the hook, though, because you don't have the religion, but you do have, for instance, a big problem with vaccination scares, anti-vaccination crowds.
Yeah.
Which, you know, causes a huge amount of damage.
Yeah.
And so we're beginning to, the States is beginning to import creationists over here, I think.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the anti-vax stuff is coming over into the States and causing trouble there. So unfortunately, we're starting to, I think, trade.
Cross-pollinate.
Yeah.
Very stupid ideas.
Yes, exactly. But
so it isn't all coming from America to here, folks.
Right. I want to make it clear that the States, they're not all that bad.
Yeah, no, absolutely not, no.
But, you know, hopefully, I feel like skeptics are, I think skeptics are doing a wonderful job in general of beginning to really organize and get the message out there, like a pro-science message.
Yeah.
That's hopefully combating this stuff.
Yes.
So,
cranial osteopathy.
Yeah.
Could explain a lot about my 16-year-old son and his various issues, because he had a bit when he was a tiny baby.
Ah, yeah.
Well, no, but they didn't. They couldn't do anything. I mean, it was farcical. The poor man was just, you know, he was a manically active toddler, well, crawler at the time. Yeah. And he was trying to do something to his head, and there was just no way you could get anywhere near him.
Right.
And it was like trying to pat a puppy that was running around the kitchen, you know.
See, apparently it was his inner skeptic.
Yeah, he was so born a skeptic. He's very skeptical.
Oh, that's the thing. That's the great thing about kids, and one of the reasons why it's kind of comical that for a long time the skeptical community was comprised of grumpy old men.
Right.
And it's bizarre because like. It's such an appealing philosophy to teenagers. It should be, at least, you know, because
they are. Well, you are at that age. You go, that's rubbish. You
right?
know?
Yeah.
The teacher tells you something, you don't believe it. Your parents tell you something, you don't believe it. So you're naturally in that zone.
Right. And I think at each level, there's something very appealing about skepticism. When you're a child, there's something very appealing about curiosity.
Yeah.
And sure, you might be believing everything your parents tell you at this point, but you're so curious that eventually you're figuring things out for yourself. You're figuring out what's the deal with Santa and the Tooth Fairy. And those are huge skeptical investigations that we do when we're young.
Yeah.
And then as a teenager, you want to give everybody a big fuck you to the establishment.
Yes.
You know, that's awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Go. You know. Do you think that? You know, what your teachers are teaching you is correct. Go out and prove them wrong then.
Yes.
I think that's a great sensibility that needs to be encouraged.
It is something I've never actually made that connection before, but between, you know, Tooth Fairy, Father Christmas, God.
Yeah.
Those are the three things that your parents might tell you to believe in when you're little.
Right.
You then discover that two of them, you know, but even with the most benign and loving parents, two of them are complete nonsense.
Right.
It's them putting the dime under your pillow for your tooth or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the presents in your stocking.
And it's world shifting. You know, previously you had this world where there's a fat man who comes in your chimney every year and gives you presents. But now, no, it's gone. Poof, gone in a puff of logic. So I think there's this debate among skeptics of whether or not you teach your kids to lie. Are you going to lie to your kids about Santa Claus? And a lot of skeptics are very staunch. No, I'm never going to lie to my kids.
Yeah.
And people have asked me, well, if you ever have kids, what are you going to do? And my answer is always, I am going to lie my pants off. I'm going to lie to them about everything.
I still lie to mine now when they're teenagers, and I say, you know, Father Christmas is going to... What's lovely is, you know, 16-year-olds going, oh, it's you, I've seen you do it. I've seen you bring it in. And I go, okay, well, he won't come then. If you don't believe him, he won't come. And then on Christmas Eve, he gets,
Yes, Merry Christmas.
He suddenly turns
Exactly.
into a gorgeous little, and he wants to cuddle on Christmas Eve because he wants to believe that,
Right.
you know,
And you know, I
which
won't,
is fine. And then it becomes a kind of gentle game
yeah.
between, you know, it's not. I don't think there's any evil
And I won't.
involved.
I don't mean just lying about Santa. I'm going to lie to them about tons of stuff. I'm going to lie to them about things lurking in the trees,
Right.
and what's in their closet, and
there
you
is a
know,
monster in that closet.
Yeah,
And he does bite, especially if you try and get out of bed.
exactly. Because I really appreciated when I was a kid. I had this ridiculous imagination, and
Yeah.
I kind of
You don't want to stifle that. do you?
Yeah, and I think thanks to that I still have this very rich fantasy life that
Right.
I can drop into. So even though, yeah, I'm hardcore skeptic and I love the real world, but I have an appreciation for the imagination.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't realize is, you know, for scientists, you need to have a really rich imagination because you need to
Yeah.
imagine what lies just beyond what we know.
Yes, yeah.
And that's what drives you to find out what is out there.
Yeah.
So, like if you're a fan of Carl Sagan, it was just his birthday the
Very
other day.
recently, wasn't it? Yeah.
And everybody should read Demon Haunted World. It's one of the greatest books on the planet.
Never read it. I will put that on my
Highly
list.
recommend it.
Is it an audio book? It probably
Maybe,
is.
yeah, it could be. I'm
Let's
sure
get
it
the audio
is.
version.
Highly recommended because Carl has had this really wonderful way of looking at the world and dreaming about it and wondering what could be. And then at the same time, he was a very staunch defender of acknowledging the world, the way the world actually is,
Right.
and in appreciating the beauty of and the immensity of our universe. And you know, nobody does it like Carl. So yeah, definitely check out Demon Haunted World.
Wow, brilliant.
He really, he's the ideal, I think, for skeptics who want to promote skepticism while not coming across like total dickheads.
Right.
We were talking about hippies earlier.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you know, I like hippies, and I think hippies have given us a lot of awesome stuff,
Yeah.
including, you know, the idea that the earth is something important that needs to be preserved.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who get caught up in being skeptical, and they throw out any hippie stuff because it's
Right.
all, you know, all touchy-feely,
Yeah.
you know, stupidity to them. When in fact what you need to do is take each argument on its own
Yes.
and decide whether or not it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to look at, let's say wind power, you know, and determine, look at the studies and figure out, well, how efficient is it, and you know, how likely are we to be able to incorporate into our everyday lives. These are things that you can look at scientifically, and it's important to look at scientifically. So yeah, I think we need to be skeptical of you know, of any trend that comes up, you
Yes.
know. But when it comes to alternative energy sources, you know, I think it's really important that we continue to look into them and find, you know.
I mean, I think what's fascinating is the another recent anniversary, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the world I grew up in was very delineated by politics, by left and right politics, and there was a very clear delineation between, you know, you were either left wing or you were right wing, or as I was often described, a wishy-washy way liberal, which is right, you know. What is interesting now is that those argue that the thing that was very central was consciousness, was your political consciousness, and I've been searching for the equivalent of that, because you can't define the world now any longer in terms of left and right.
Yeah, I know that amongst the skeptics community, there's a lot of there's a big political fight, you know.
Right.
Like skeptics don't always agree on everything, and politics is one very clear example.
I'm sure, yeah.
And a lot of prominent skeptics, like Penn and Teller and others, they consider themselves libertarians, because, you know, they kind of reject that sort of left and right thing. But the problem to me becomes that then that's another label under which there are all these assumptions that you have to go by. And they end up believing kind of stupid things, like, you know, let's abolish the entire government, no more schools, you know. And it's like, well, I was with you up until the no more schools thing. You can often divide certain belief systems into left and right still. For instance, the mysticism stuff, you lump under the left, but the right has its share.
Yeah. Oh God, absolutely.
And then some,
yeah.
like the religious stuff, you can throw all at the right
Yes.
for the most part. Conspiracy theories, the left has the 9/11 bullshit.
Yeah.
That the government, that Bush calls 9/11.
Bush flew the planes. Yeah,
And
I mean,
then, it's completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's been thoroughly debunked, and
Yeah.
yet
It still hangs
it's an
on.
unsinkable rubber ducky.
Yeah, yeah.
But then the right comes right back at it with, Obama's not supposed to be president because,
Yeah.
he was born in
He's not an
Nigeria
American.
or something, they think. I don't know. Which is even more ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't think they could come up with a conspiracy theory that was possibly more ridiculous than the 9/11
Yes.
stuff, but they didn't. Not quite as offensive, but
Yeah.
completely ridiculous. And that's why it's important to go into those things with an open mind, just not so open that your brain falls out.
Yes. Is that the danger with skepticism? My mind is so open that my brain's just falling out my bottom.
Flopped onto the floor. That's totally the problem. It's important just to keep your wits about you and look at the actual facts. Look at the science.
Yeah.
When it all comes down to it, just go back to the facts and
Yeah.
figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. No, that is brilliant. Thank you very much for that quick tour of skepticism in
Thank
West London.
you.
Thank you. No, you've been most kind.
Oh,
Thank you.
no,
You're
it's
really
lovely.
good. I've learned lots.
I mean, what happened was I went back to drama school after a weird summer of being on top of the pops 3 times and forgetting my words at least once. Because it was live then, you had to do the re-recording and then you could mime. But because I wasn't available to do the vocal, I had to sing live.
Right.
Which I suppose looks quite impressive, but if you forget the words...
If you forget the words, it's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, so I sort of went... She's a slag, and he's a creep. And I was like, I'm so upset. I kind of missed a little chunk out, but I think only my sister noticed.
Right.